Hi, I'm Jeff Pierce, the Foreign Sales Manager at Scientific Anglers, and today we want to show you how to properly rig our 100-pound braided loops onto one of our BWT fly lines. So in order to rig our 100-pound braided loops onto our 100-pound BWT line, there's a few things you're going to need. Big water taper fly line with a 100-pound core. The line comes with braided loops, but we also do sell the 100-pound braided loops separately. You're going to want some super glue or Zap-A-Gap in order to make this as bomb-proof as it can be when you rig it. You're going to need a pair of cutters, sharp cutters, to cut the tag ends and to cut the end of the fly line when you start to rig. And your choice of 30 to 50 pound mono or fluoro to tie your nail knots. Let's get started. So we're going to start out by grabbing the line out of the pack, getting it off the spool because we need to isolate both ends because we're going to put a 100-pound loop on both ends of the fly line. These 100-pound loops are critical when you're chasing big, hard-pulling species like GTs, Arapaima, and various pelagics. When you pull the line out of the pack, sometimes you're going to see the fly line cut at a slight angle. It's easiest to do this next step if you just get a sharp pair of cutters and give yourself a nice clean edge. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the fly line, grab my 100-pound braided loop, and I'm going to start to snake the fly line up inside the braid. It's almost like an inchworm, so I'm going to push, and then I'm going to pinch with this finger, and I'm going to push, let go with that finger, and that is allowing this braid to open up. The more open the braid is, the easier it is for your fly line to slide up. You want to slide this line up inside the braid until you get to where the braid is doubled back inside itself. If your fly line is back too far, what happens is you end up with a hinge point, and over time while you're casting, you could end up having this monofilament get damaged. So now I'm butted completely up against this. It goes right from the back end of the braid to the fly line. So now we've got a nice tight connection and we're ready for the next step. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna install 2 nail knots. I do 9-wrap nail knots. We're gonna do a nail knot very close to the end of the fly line, and then we're gonna do one right at the very end of the braid here. I've got my homemade nail knot tool, which I really like to use. It's just a really stiff piece of fluorocarbon. And then for my nail knot, I'm doing, this is 35-pound fluorocarbon. I prefer to use fluorocarbon over nylon because nylon will weaken as it gets wet. This is gonna be a 9-wrap nail knot. And it's important as you do this to make sure that your wraps sit nice on top next to each other and don't overlap and go over the top of each other. 9. Now with my little loop tool, all I'm doing now is I'm taking my 35-pound fluoro and putting it partway through here. Now I'm actually going to transfer fingers, squeeze it because you don't want the nail knot wraps to go over the top of each other, and then I'm just going to give that a quick tug. So there's your first nail knot. Now you're going to do one more nail knot up here. We're going to do this 1/4 inch or so from where the end of the fly line is inside the braid. So again, I'm using my 35-pound fluoro. You can use the line of your choice. And I'm going to do 9 wraps. Now, before I tighten this, I have the ability of, right now I'm a little farther up the line than I'd like to be. But because I haven't tightened it yet, I'm actually able to slide the nail knot down closer to where I'd like it to be, which is going to be right in this area here. Pull it real hard, and now I'm just going to cut my tags. Now I've got my 2 nail knots exactly where I want them to be. Next step would be to add some Zap-A-Gap. You're spending a bunch of money. Chances are you're traveling halfway around the world. So whatever we can do to make sure that we do not have any failure of any kind with your rigging. I like to put a little bit on the 2 nail knots. I'll put a little bit where the braid ends inside, and then I'll also do a little bit where the loop goes back inside itself, just again to make this absolutely bomb-proof. Next step is going to be to put the heat shrink on. We put 2 pieces of this in with each package. You can use a full piece when you do each loop. Personally, I like to have a little bit shorter, so I'm gonna actually cut these in half. Also, if you do catch a bunch of fish, that heat shrink can get chewed up a little bit, so it's always good to have a little bit of reserve on your trip. So I'm cutting my piece in half here, and now I'm going to use my trusty nail knot tool to... This just makes it easier. Sometimes you have to fight to get the heat shrink over the top of your loop, so I found this is much easier. Now we're going to slide it down over past our 2 nail knots. So I'm gonna center this where my braid ends. And now we're ready to get the heat gun out, give it a shot of heat and melt it. I just happen to have a trusty heat gun. It's important when you're doing this to not exceed 275 degrees. If you get much over that, you can have a chance of damaging the fly line. If you keep it under 275, you'll have no issues. So let's get this thing dialed up to 275. Once it gets to temperature, you'll know because the heat shrink will start to shrink down against that little lump in the middle. That's where the 100-pound loop ends. So once I know this is ready to go, I'm gonna give it a quick roll in my fingers to make sure that it gets down into the braid. This is gonna test out at nearly 100 pounds. So you will not be able to pull hard enough to make this fail. All right, so we got our loop done on the back end. Now we're gonna do the loop on the front end. So we've got our 200-pound core loops on the fly line ready to go. The line is ready to put on your reel. We've tested them. You're gonna get darn near 100 pounds of straight pull before you have an issue. You'll never be able to do that with pressure on your fly rod. So once you get them rigged up like this, get them on your rod and you're ready to fish. Good luck.